Thank you so much, Adam, for organizing this and for the folks at Innovex, for Nicola and lots of the folks who have been working very hard to make this happen. So please, another round of applause because it takes a lot of people to get this done. And it's an honor to be on this stage. And I'll introduce who we have with us, and then we'll have a discussion and a dialogue. John Griggs is directly to my left, and he's the Chief Financial Officer of Kodiak Gas Services, which is the largest or maybe the second largest, depending on who you talk to, in contract compression. But before joining Kodiak, he was also the CFO of a leading plastics recycling company, as well as Conquest Completion Services. He co-founded Rubicon Oilfield, which is now part of Innovex. And he's also had various roles in private equity and capital markets, including at CSL, D.E. Shaw, and Simmons. So thank you for joining us. Danny Wesson is to his left, is someone I've known a long time. He is the Chief Operating Officer of Diamondback, a company that I admire, and he joined in 2012 as an operations engineer. Before joining Diamondback, he had different operating and engineering roles at Conoco and at Bopco, and he is a mechanical engineer by training at LSU and a member of the Permian Basin Society of Petroleum Engineers. Thank you, Danny. And finally, Mike Howard, who is chairman and CEO of Howard Midstream Energy Partners. And he not only leads HEP, which is a diversified multi-billion-dollar energy company that owns midstream infrastructure in 4 states and Mexico, but he's an active speaker on the industry and is known to be pro-energy, pro-climate, and anti-poverty. He is a chemical engineer by training. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for your time. I thought I'd start with something that's a challenge for the industry, but maybe also related to why we are here, kind of celebrating the good that this industry does for the country and for the world. But despite the good that the industry does do, and there is a lot of good, recruiting people has been historically a challenge, and we need a lot of people. We need people from trade schools, we need petroleum engineers, mechanical engineers, geologists, and increasingly we need computer and data scientists. So there is a war for talent out there, and at the same time that we have this war, there is some reticence to join the industry for various reasons. You know, climate science is one of them, and we'll be hearing from Judith Curry in a little bit. I think there's worries about the future for demand for the product, you know, electrification of vehicles, things like that. And then, as we're reminded with WTI sitting here in the low 60s, we have industry cycles to boot. So I think, you know, I'd love to hear a little bit, each of you, your perspectives on attracting new talent into the industry, attracting folks from trade schools and from universities into your companies to think about studying and being a part of this industry, how your different companies, different parts of the industry have tackled this challenge. Maybe we'll start with John.
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. First, Adam, thanks for having me here, and I'm humbled to be next to these 2 great panelists as well. So, Hasi talked about Kodiak. It's a simple business. We're a contract compression company. We have about 4.4 million horsepower, a few $1 billion worth of horsepower, which we lease and provide to upstream and midstream operators. And I say this all the time. We might have a few $1 billion of assets on our balance sheet, but really we provide a service. Compression is a service. So without having quality people, that's just dumb iron. We've got about 1,300 employees. 700 of them are in the Permian. We're the largest player in the Permian. So attracting and retaining talent is mission critical to our success. And at our company too, and for anybody that does what we do in our business, it's a commoditized space in a commodity industry, and there's 2 ways you can compete. You can be the low-cost provider, or you can provide the most value. We've chosen the latter path, and so in order to do that, we have to attract, train, develop, and retain the best people. So what have we done at Kodiak in this world? So we have partnerships with a variety of technical colleges, Midland Tech, Wyoming Tech, Oklahoma Institute of Technology come to mind. We give them some money. We actually have compression programs at those technical schools. And then we knew that we could no longer hire people laterally or just friends of our founders as we got to scale and got bigger. And so we decided we would have a pioneering effort to develop what we call our Bears Academy. Kodiak Bear is our logo. And our Bears Academy is a state-of-the-art training facility for compression talent, or excuse me, for entry-level talent and experienced talent to learn the ins and outs of compression, and think of it as like a college, 101, 201, 301. You can continue taking classes. Further, we developed what we call our Ignite program, which is an internship program where, in effect, it's a next man or next woman up type mentality where we take these entry level candidates into Kodiak, run them through the Bears program, put them in the field, and after about 6 months, we have our own internal job fair where we take those people and place them in the areas of need where they want to work and where we need that talent. So look, we do, and then we do all the other stuff we can do to make those people happy. My granddad always said, a happy wife, happy life. Very analogous in our business. If you have a happy employee, odds are you're going to have a happier customer. So our mission is to take care of our people and attract the best folks that we can in this business and give them the right resources to be the best that they can be.
Thanks, John. Is there anything you would add to that in terms of what Diamondback's doing, Danny?
No, I think, well, first, I echo John said, and Adam, thank you for hosting us here. Diamondback, we really pride ourselves on our people, and really our success is a story of our people's success. We talk a lot about our execution prowess and how we're regarded as one of the premier operational executors in the basin and in the space. And really, it's driven by empowering our people and giving them the rope and leash to make decisions and be entrepreneurs in place. And in our recruiting efforts, we have a lot of different strategies because we have people, 2,000 people from field organization, boots on the ground, to engineers in the office, to back office administration. And so all of those strategies are different, but the one thing that's unique, that's the same across all those positions, is we really give people the power to make decisions and be impactful. And I think that, along with the industry culture of allowing people to improve their quality of life and advance their quality of life faster than most other industries in this country and maybe in this world, is unique, and that will continue to inspire people and attract people to the industry. We always say, that everybody has their own hopes, dreams, and aspirations for themselves and their family, and I think the oil and gas business and us at Diamondback, we have a responsibility to help people meet those hopes, dreams, and aspirations, and they have a responsibility to give us their best and give us, all that they can. And when those two things align, it's really a beautiful thing, and it really creates a culture that, can't be brought down. And I think that continues to attract people, not just to the oil and gas business, but to our company at Diamondback as well.
Thank you.
You want me to throw in anything?
Yeah,
we can move on.
no, especially because I know, just we don't know each other, but I know because it's on your website, and there's a lot that you talk about. Culture is important to you, and culture is important to me, and so I imagine that plays into this, both in terms of the challenge of maintaining a culture, the challenge of assimilating people into your culture, the challenge of evolving your culture, but also finding people who are aligned with your culture. So I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts here.
Yeah, so this industry is the greatest industry because we are the industry that powers every other industry. And we're in competition with a lot of other industries right now. And we're the only industry that's grown in the last 10 years that's provided great jobs, great lives for our employees. So what we've been advocating for is to promote our industry more and to build these long-term pipelines to high schools, trade schools, universities. We've already done a great job doing that, but the cyclical nature of our industry scares people away sometimes. There's a few positive things that have happened. One, we have an administration now that is pro-oil and gas. We've got Chris Wright as the Secretary of Energy talking about this. We don't have a State of the Union going on, and we're saying we're going to run into peak oil. I think those narratives of peak oil and that our industry is going away has definitely quieted down. That's going to help us. But there is no easy place for us to go get staff right now. And so we're going to have to continue to promote our industry as the greatest industry of any other one. And all the people in this room that have the grit and resilience and the characteristics that we have. Our company is big on promoting that and attracting those traits. And we don't mind investing in employees, even if they leave us in 3 to 5 years, because we believe it's the right thing to do for the industry. And I know these guys do the same thing. And there's just not an easy way to get people into our industry besides just a multi-year, multi-decade tranche. Because remember, if we stay flat, you have to replace 30% of your production every year. The U.S. makes 13 million barrels of oil a day right now. It'll lose 4 million barrels if we were to stop drilling right now by next year. So just to stay flat, we got to find 4 million barrels of oil a day, a year. And so the decline, there's some cyclical nature to it, but also there's some continuation. And we preach that a lot in our company.
You know, John said something interesting, and I'd love to hear Danny kind of build on it. So, John, you said we're a commodity supplier to commodity business, which is an interesting sentence, and there were two ways to address that challenge. And Danny, you're the chief operating officer of, I think, the biggest independent company in the Permian, and really a phenomenal company that has grown over a long period of time and has had durably kind of lower costs, high efficiency, best in class safety. And I don't want to insult you at all, but I would say if I looked at the Diamondback business plan and compared it to any other company in the Permian, it's the same business plan, actually. And yet, you've executed it at a very high level. And what's interesting is you've executed it as you've assimilated lots of companies. So you not only have assimilated or seen what's excellent about your company, but you've got a firsthand look at what happens at other companies. And I'm kind of curious. You've made kind of a durable competitive advantage in this business that is nominally a commodity business, I think through culture. But I'd love to hear a little bit about why you think Diamondback has been able to have had this success and had such an incredibly low cost structure at scale.
Yeah, we get this question a lot, and it's really a pretty simple answer. We talk about culture really being important at Diamondback, and the one of the primary pieces of that culture is a humble curiosity. And I don't think we see that a lot in some of the companies that we've integrated with, where you truly have this just really entrepreneurial, humble curiosity throughout the organization. And you kept saying like you've done, and it certainly hasn't been me. It's been all the people at Diamondback that have executed every day. And it's the little decisions that get made every day on, trying to build a better mousetrap, and just bringing your humility to that, and understanding that somebody else may have a better idea or approach than you, but everybody aligns seeking what is the best answer and how do we get there. And it doesn't matter if it was, person A or person B's idea. It's just everyone marching toward the same goal of getting to the best answer, and everyone taking credit at the same time for that best answer. And that humble curiosity has really been with us since day one, and as well as some other things. But that's really what's driven us to be successful in any integration. Is people come in the door for Diamondback the first day after an acquisition, or even if it's just off the streets hiring, they don't really know what to expect, and they're nervous, and they're apprehensive, and they have anxiety. And from the very first moments of interacting with our team, I'm not going to say it's 100% of the time always true, but generally they realize pretty quickly these folks are just like me, and I know some things that they don't, and I'm here to help and can share some things. And people get excited when they get to learn from somebody else and go implement that and make the whole program better. And I've seen it time and time again, and the joy and the fun it brings to people in their jobs. And then they get to go home every day and feel like they've contributed to something, which is really what you want your organization to feel like, is that they've contributed to something and they've made an impact, and they're not just here to come check a box and go home and get paid.
And I'm curious as well, and I'd love to bring John in and Mike in. So we talked a little about the challenge of attracting people to the industry, but you also have to retain people in the industry. And I'd love to hear how your companies think about keeping people motivated. And I'm kind of also particularly interested, is it a little different for younger generations? Are there things that you have to do and evolve to make the workplace interesting for them, or is it quite similar to what you've been doing?
Well, we've learned you have to have purpose. If you go to our website, purpose is the first thing you'll see. Our purpose is to deliver positive energy. And what we've learned by having that purpose and aligning everybody towards that purpose, it makes you feel like you're working for a higher meaning, a higher purpose. And I think that's what young people are looking for, is to make sure that their jobs have that meaning. And after we're explaining to them, they understand that our industry is as great as it is, makes them feel proud of what we do. And especially if they come from places, 'cause we operate in 4 states. So when we're attracting people in Pennsylvania, it's a little different than attracting people from, in Texas or Oklahoma. And so letting them know that, we are doing good, not only for people, but for the planet, for everything. And that purpose, we feel like, has really done a good job. Our retaining levels in our company are a little better than industry average for that reason. So I think it's a huge deal in retaining people.
So we've heard about humble curiosity. We've heard about purpose. Would you add anything to the mix, John?
I have to, because I love this talk about culture. Kodiak, again, like, we're a people-driven organization, and we did an acquisition last year that we added about 2/3 as many people as we had already, and we have a really strong culture, and our founder built the business kind of on his own shoulders and then hired a lot of people that he knew. And what we found after that and we're not a very acquisitive business, what we found is that we weren't doing a good job with culture. We weren't doing a good job of bringing teams together and trying to speak from the same, script. And so we took a step back as a leadership team and really as a company and said, we need to come up with our own purpose. And I know that Mike's had some conversations with my CEO about this, but we call it our green print. And you think about it, it took about 6 months or so to come up with it, but it's in effect the blueprint when you're going to go build something. But our colors are green, just like we're the bear as our logo. And our green print, our purpose is one relentless force powering our critical energy future. And the purpose is important to us because I agree with exactly what Danny said. You can't have employees be fired up to go to work every day and take care of your customer and take care of their fellow man and take care of this industry if they're just drawing a paycheck. You got to have something else, a reason to get out of bed every day. We backed that up with strategic drivers and metrics, and then behaviors. The drivers are things that we want people to strive for the next 3 to 5 years, and then the behaviors are what do we need to start doing now in order to achieve those drivers and live up to that purpose. And then we as a leadership team, a handful of us, have flown everywhere in the country. We're in, gosh, I should know the answer, maybe 8 states or so, mostly Permian, but smaller towns. So we had to go all over. And we have delivered that message to every single employee. I think we have one group left to go talk to. And the change in culture and the change in alignment, and I think the feeling that we get from the folks on the front line, which some companies would call like, the lower rung, but we call them the front line, and the guys that touch the customer the most, all the way up to the middle managers and then into the C-level, is just so powerful. And it's been such a competitive advantage for us in terms of attracting talent and reducing that turnover and making sure that we're set up for this next chapter of Kodiak's success.
Thank you. This industry has been characterized by relentless innovation. If I think about when I started in the industry, it was about seismic, offshore, bright spot drilling on the Gulf Coast. You were at Burlington, they had that coal seam methane in San Juan. That was super innovative. There was the tight gas sands that sort of became extremely important. And then after the sands, the coal seam, after the coal seam, the gas shale, and then the gas oil, or the oil shales. And it strikes me it's been a while since we've talked about a new thing. And so, Danny, I guess the question for you is, are we in harvest mode as an industry? And if we are, what does that mean? Is that sustainable? Or what are the new things we're going to have to be doing and thinking about in order to have, another decade as bright as the one that we just had?
Yeah, I think the industry from a resource standpoint is cyclical, just like, our price is cyclical and everything else. And we've been blessed over the past couple decades to have really discovered some tremendous resources, mainly in the United States, but globally as well. And we are in harvest mode at the moment. We are in the harvest mode of harvesting some of the greatest resources we've ever had in the United States from an oil and gas perspective. And I think there's a lot of time left for us to harvest those resources because they're so tremendous. But I do agree that we have to be aware of what is the resource life of that in harvest mode, and what is the time where we need to start looking for additional resources. And I think you're seeing a lot of that already today, mainly offshore Gulf of Mexico domestically. But internationally, some of the things that are happening in on land in unconventional reservoirs in the Vaca Muerta in Argentina, up in the Montney and Canada, are really, really amazing. And those are going to be some amazing resources that are going to feed this industry for the decades beyond this decade. And so I think it's nuanced, but I do believe that resource harvest and consolidation and driving capital into the hands of a few inspires capital to be deployed to go look for resource elsewhere. And I'm not a bear on the harvest mode of the resource of the Permian, but I'm a big Permian bull, and I think there's probably more resource here that we have yet to unleash. But I believe that the exploration of the future is going to look different. I mean, some of the things we're doing with AI around seismic today is really, really unique, and finding resource that we've passed over, especially in shallow Gulf of Mexico. So things like that are going to unleash more resource where we've already been active that we just didn't realize was there because we didn't have the data granularity or the processing capacity that we have today. And who knows what we may have into the future.
Mike, I think you're the only panelist here that has an international asset. Are there other things that you think about as you think about the maturity of the Permian Basin, or business lines that you think make sense, or that a forward-thinking leader should be thinking about?
Yeah. So when we have a pipeline in Mexico. We are the primary gas supply to northern Monterey, to power plants there. And so we're seeing a lot of nearshoring happening where these factories are actually being built around our pipe because it's the lowest carbon form of energy and the most reliable form of energy they've had, coming from the Eagle Ford Shale. And so what we believe is that the future power is going to be driven by natural gas. So in the Permian, we got 25 BCF a day coming out of the Permian. We got about 30 BCF a day coming out of the Marcellus. The U.S. uses about 100 to 103 BCF a day. We think that natural gas out of the Permian is the future story. Oil gets all the news, but as I think about the next decade and where I want to put my investment, I'm thinking of natural gas for power plants, for pipelines, for LNG export. Just an LNG export, for instance, to give the Permian people here some idea. We export about 14 BCF a day off the Gulf Coast. We produce about 100 BCF, más o menos, in the U.S. We're going to increase that by another 14 BCF in the next 5 years. Those plants are under construction, permitted currently. That's a 14% increase in natural gas. Where's that going to come from? To increase 14% in the Permian, a lot more pipe has to get built, a lot more compression has to happen, a lot more gas plants has to get built, or pipelines out of the Marcellus have to get built. Well, good luck building a pipeline out of the Marcellus. Even under the current administration, if we don't keep this administration and the philosophies around for 4 years longer than the 4 years we hope to get, and get some serious permitting reform, Texas is going to be where it's coming from. So the Eagle Ford Shale, Permian, East Texas, Haynesville, where a lot of that gas is going to come from, to meet that demand.
And that's an interesting point you bring up, because there's a tremendous gas resource in the Permian, and yet it's treated a little bit like a waste product. And it's interesting to me that a lot of the markets are actually in Texas, and yet the pipes don't get built. So who do we blame for this? Probably not the federal government, unfortunately. So it's got to be somebody. So why is gas so cheap in the Permian, and why is that such a tough nut to crack?
Yeah, so a 42-inch pipeline is about $3.5 million a mile to build. And for an infrastructure company like us, the upside is not in price. The upside is filling that pipeline up. So you're not going to build, you can't attract investors to build major infrastructure across Texas for the hundreds of miles it takes to get to the Gulf Coast, and forget building west, right? You're not going to build through Arizona and California right now. So the only place for this gas to go is possibly Mexico or to the Gulf Coast. Um, and so at $3 million a mile for 42 inch, you're going to have people make commitments. And so are you going to make it, if you're an oil driller and gas is the thing you're trying to get rid of, you're not getting paid a lot for your gas. It takes a lot of fortitude to put up the commitments it takes to build the infrastructure. Each time the infrastructure has been built out of the Permian, from Gulf Coast crossing to the latest one is Matterhorn pipes, they get full really quickly, right? Why do they get full? Well, there's more gas coming out of the Permian. It seems like every well that's drilled, it seems a little more gassier depending on what bench they're going for. So like I said, 15 years ago, the Permian was producing a couple BCF. You know, today it's producing 25 BCF. It would produce 30, 35 BCF if infrastructure could get built. And that's what's causing low gas prices, is the lack of infrastructure.
And yet we have these low gas prices, and I often hear as well the power is an issue. Does power remain something that's constrained, and is there something that either the Texas needs to do or the federal government needs to do to allow power to be built?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, so Texas is not connected to the federal grid, right? So Texas is ERCOT. So we are our own worst enemy, in that we do not have a capacity market in Texas. So we cannot build industrial scale dispatchable power in Texas right now because forward power prices don't support it. So right now, Texas needs to add a Germany size of grid to Texas in the next 5 years if you meet this demand for oil and gas, for data centers, for LNG offtake, for people moving to Texas. And we don't have a market that supports that. So in the Permian, we're seeing, to get a grid connection right now, which I'm sure Danny can talk about, in South Texas to get a grid connection, in San Antonio, Texas to get a grid connection, you're 3 to 10 years out on some of this stuff. And so it's embarrassing to me as a 7th generation Texas, I chose to put my business in Texas, that we don't have the market to support dispatchable gas plant builds right now. And so the current legislature is not really going to do much to fix it either. So it's a serious infrastructure issue for Texas right now.
Yeah, we don't have enough time to get into what got us in the situation in Texas and debate all that. But I think the legislature has recognized that there's a problem. Just today, the legislature passed legislation that said basically, hey, the Permian power issue needs to be supported. They directed the PUC to build some high voltage line out to the Permian to provide power. There's still some debate on what that's going to look like from a voltage capacity, but the state has recognized that they've really gotten behind on infrastructure build out, and so there's going to be a lot of grid build out coming over the next 5 to 10 years, and then with the market that we have with ERCOT, if there's capacity in the lines, typically things will get built, but to the gas point earlier, they need commitment, right? You're not going to have one of the large, power producers come in here and build a multi-billion-dollar facility on the spec pricing coming out of ERCOT. They're going to need commitments from people that say, "Hey, listen, I will back this so that it can be built and provide power for 10 to 20 years."
Thank you. On the power subject, is electrification kind of an unstoppable trend? It seems like there's been a lot of electrification. It's sometimes hard from the outside to see, is that for ESG narrative reasons, or is electrifying things actually more efficient? And can you do everything you want to do, or would you do a lot more if you had more power?
Gosh, this is not a long enough panel for us to get into everything that you just asked, because what we've done at a federal level is, and even at a Texas level, we've restricted supply of electricity over the last decade, and we're mandating increasing demand. That's a terrible situation. And then on top of that, you give production tax credits to solar and wind, which incentivizes solar and wind to get built over which is non-dispatchable power over dispatchable power, which is reliable. And so electrification has been talked about as a cleaner or lower carbon form of doing things. That's just not factually accurate. And so that's part of the issue that FERC is dealing with now, that the Congress is dealing with now at a federal level, because from a grid study standpoint, we know that we haven't increased the electricity demand in this country in 20 years. It's been pretty steady. But now with electrification of everything, EV mandates, mandating natural gas not get used in your homes, that only new homes in certain states are only electric. Some of those mandates and then data centers and AI, we have an actually 2% a year increase in electricity demand now facing us. We haven't done that in 20 years in this country. So we don't have the permitting infrastructure to allow for that to happen at the speeds in which we need it to happen. So what you can expect is higher electricity prices, slower builds, and we're going to run into some problems, especially out here. So you got people, hopefully like Diamondback and others, that are going to be doing things behind the meter. That's what I think is going to happen more than grid increase.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but this has been an extraordinary panel of really talented and accomplished people. So please join me in giving them a round of applause for their insights and their time.